Hi everyone, today I'm going to introduce you about Francis Bacon, and I'm really excited to do so because he is a very significant philosophical figure of the early modern period. So Francis Bacon was an English philosopher and statesman who served as Attorney General and Lord Chancellor of England under King James I. A little bit more background information about him. He came from a prominent politically connected family. His father, Sir Nicholas Bacon, was the Lord Keeper of the Great Seal, a high-ranking official in the English government. His mother, Annie Cook Bacon, was a well-educated woman who came from a scholarly background. Growing up in this intellectually stimulating environment, Bacon was exposed to ideas of power, philosophy, and law from an early age. Later, Bacon entered Trinity College at Cambridge to start his academic pursuits. It was there that he was first introduced to the ideas of ancient philosophers like Aristotle. However, he quickly became dissatisfied with the scholastic approach to knowledge, which was based on medieval interpretation of Aristotle and other ancient thinkers. He felt that the traditional method of learning were outdated and need to be reformed. Therefore, armed with critical perspective, he put his thoughts into writing and created Novum Organum. Novum Organum in Latin is for new instrument. In this book, he presented a new way of acquiring knowledge, one that would forever change the course of science and philosophy. Prior to Bacon, philosophers like Aristotle and medieval scholars relied heavily on deductive reasoning, starting with broad abstract principles and working down to specific conclusions. Bacon, however, argued that this method was flawed and insufficient. Instead, he proposed an inductive approach, an approach based on careful observation, experimentation, and the collection of evidence from the natural world. In other words, Bacon's vision for knowledge was not one of abstract theorizing, but of grounded empirical inquiry. He believed that true knowledge arises from the bottom up, through observing phenomena and testing hypotheses, rather than relying on ancient texts or untested assumptions. This was a radical shift in thinking and set the stage for what we now call the scientific method. Let us dig into inductive reasoning a little bit more. So it is the process of making generalizations based on specific observations. For example, instead of assuming that all swans are white because that's what we observed in the past, an inductive approach would involve systematically observing swans in different environments and drawing conclusions from a broad range of data. Bacon argued that the mind is not born with pre-existing knowledge. Rather, knowledge is built from our sensory experiences. This is the core of his empiricism, the idea that knowledge came from experience, particularly from the senses. To Bacon, the world was a vast unexplored domain, and the only way to uncover its secrets was through methodical, empirical research. In order to facilitate this, Bacon introduced tables which are the tools for organizing observation, and they are table of presence, which is what happens when something is present, and table of absence, which is what happens when it is absent, and table of degrees showing how things vary in different conditions. He used them to systematically record and analyze data. These rigorous approach laid the groundwork for experimental science. But Bacon didn't just want to change the way we gather knowledge. He also wanted to address the flaws in human reasoning itself. He identified what he called the idols of the mind, which are mental obstacles that prevent clear thinking and hinder our pursuit of knowledge. Bacon characterized these idols into four types. The first one is idol of the tribe. These are biases inherent in human nature, like the tendency to overgeneralize or to see patterns that don't exist. The second one is idol of the cave. These are the personal biases shaped by individual experiences and backgrounds, influencing how we interpret the world. Third is idols of the marketplace. These arise from language itself, the way words can mislead or limit our thinking, creating misunderstanding in communication. And last is the idol of the theater. These are the outdated philosophy and dogmas that we blindly accept as truths, much like actors playing roles in a theater. Bacon argued that these idols cloud our judgment and prevent us from observing the world as it truly is. To reach our true knowledge, we must rid ourselves of these biases and approach the world with clear, objective minds. Bacon's emphasis on empirical research and skepticism toward authority is still at the heart of critical thinking today. Whether in medicine, technology, or social sciences, the scientific method Bacon championed continue to guide how we solve problems and uncover new knowledge. And perhaps more importantly, Bacon's call for intellectual humility, his insistence that we must discard our biases and confront the limitation of human understanding remains a critical part of the philosophy of science and epistemology. In conclusion, Francis Bacon's work reshaped the way we understand knowledge and its pursuit. His emphasis on the scientific method, his focus on empirical observation, and his critical eye on human reasoning have had an enduring impact on both philosophy and the natural science, especially scientists like Newton or Galileo. Bacon didn't just argue for a new method of inquiry, he proposed the vision of human progress through a mastery of nature, a vision that continues to influence us today. And that's all. Thank you for watching.